All right. Hello, everyone. Vanakkam. Very good evening to all of you. This is Prashant once again, this side, here to spend another wonderful evening with all of you. Thank you all for joining in. I hope more of you join in as we progress on today's session as well. I see a sum totality from approximately 1,000 delegates, 24 of you out here. Seems like we have many experienced munners. But I'm sure as we progress through this session today, we'd probably be having a lot more people joining in as well. So it's been wonderful speaking to you yesterday, albeit it looks like I'm speaking to myself on YouTube Live. But I'm sure you're on the other side with a smile on your face and hopefully a notepad and pen as well. But like yesterday, if you can see and hear me, please do leave a heart in the chat box so I'd be able to know that I'm visible and audible to all of you. It can be an emoji or it can be in a chat box, either or, whatever suits your boat. And I hope some of y'all went through the session I did yesterday as well. It has been recorded and kept for all of you. It covered about how you can prepare, right, from your study guide to your country profile, the way you're going to be addressing the committee, and a lot of, you could say, tips and tricks to work your way towards winning best delegate at Hearts MUN 2026. And of course, we also completed a certain number of points. I believe six points from the Hearts MUN rules of procedure this year. Of course, we're going to be continuing on that for today's session. And before we begin, I'd like to take the initiative to wish all of you a happy Onam. I know it's tomorrow, but on behalf of all of us at Team Hearts MUN, wishing you and your families a very happy Onam. God bless you all, and hope you have a wonderful time with your family and your friends. And of course, after which I look forward to meeting all of you in person at the conference too. So, to begin with today's session, let's continue from where we left off last time. We left off at point number 6, which was informal voting. We're going to be doing point number 7, that is formal voting as well, don't worry. But not immediately. When we come to the aspect of the resolution, is when we will revisit point number 7. In the meantime, let's move on to the second sub list of rules of procedures of Hearts MUN. That's rules pertaining to the executive board, the secretariat, and all the different bodies that work in tandem towards making Hearts MUN a success. So the first group of people I'd really like to talk to you all about today, and I'm referring to point number 8 in the rules of procedure, is in fact the executive board. You see, in all the 27 committees that are going to be simulated, you are going to be having two very dynamic people, boys and girls, irrespective. They are a lot like your age. Your age, in the sense, means probably few years older than you. Reason being, they're highly experienced MUNers, much like you are coming in for your first, second, third, fifth MUN. They have done numerous number of Model United Nations conferences in their experience. And because of the sheer experience they have, they are now considered somebody called the executive board members, which are essentially your adjudicators, your moderators, and the judges for all the different committees. So in totality, we'll be having a team of 54 executive board members at Hearts MUN 2026. Like I said, they're young, they're dynamic, they're approachable. Okay, I don't want you to look at them from the perspective of like a sir or a teacher. It's more like a guide and a mentor, a more like a facilitator is what I would say an executive board member essentially is, where their job, or rather their responsibility when it comes to the conference, is to be with you guys in your own respective committees, and essentially enable discussions and deliberations and moderate these different discussions and deliberations. Like how you have like an elocution competition, or you have like a debate competition that takes place from time to time, something you would be familiar with. You'd notice there is like a panel of judges, right? So much like that, you have somebody called the executive board, where in every classroom there are these two judges, less like judges, more like you could say moderators and facilitators that basically guide you, mentor you, and also push you in the direction of finding, you know, innovative solutions to the agendas that you're discussing, to the problems you're discussing. And of course, they give you different grades, different points on, your engagements as well. Now, when it comes to these executive board members, they are responsible people. They're approachable, but even responsible. And they're responsible for your committee. Every committee has two executive board members, a chairperson and a co-chairperson, basically two co-chairpersons. Their decision when it comes to your committee, irrespective which committee you are, is always upheld and final for all discussions and debate matters in the committee. Also, they're responsible for the decorum in your committee as well. As we had covered yesterday about the decorum aspect, they are also responsible for ensuring that your committee is maintaining decorum, and also have the right to, take any kind of action if any inappropriate behavior by delegates is also there. And also, they have a right to ask you for justifications in terms of debate and stats, which basically means what? If you make a statement in your committee, you make a statement while you're discussing, while you're deliberating. I'm sorry. If you make a statement while you're discussing, while you're deliberating, at that juncture in time, the chairperson can ask you to justify that, like explain why you made such a statement, or what is your stance, or what is the topic you're trying to put across. So they are moderators, okay? They don't take sides. They're not on anybody's side. They don't, they're not biased in any way. Their objective, their sole objective, is to maintain discipline and progress in forming solutions to the problem. These are the executive board members. Each committee has two of them. Please remember one thing: they are not like sirs and teachers. You don't need to, how do you say, be intimidated or fearful of them. Rather, they're approachable. If you're a first time delegate, you can approach them, share, I'm a first time delegate. They will guide you, they will mentor you. They're there for you more than anybody else. So this is what you call your point number 8, your executive board. Now, in point number 9, there is something which is called appeal. There is something which is called appeal. So essentially, if something is bothering you in committee, okay, they are you have some sort of, say, grievance, or some sort of issue, or some sort of concern in the committee, what you can simply do, any concern, basically any concern, any grievance, any difficulty, any dissatisfaction you are facing in your committee during the course of this conference. Simply put, what you need to do is raise your placard, say permission to appeal to the chair. Once the chairperson recognizes you, like how we raise our hand and sir or ma'am, our teacher generally recognizing, yes, Sumit, what is it? So, like that, the chairperson will recognize you when you raise your placard saying permission to appeal to the chair. You can approach the chairperson and appeal to them about whatever concern, dissatisfaction, grievance, any issue you're kind of facing. Don't bottle it up inside. Please share it with your concerned executive board member. If it is within his jurisdiction, he will deal with it himself only, and solve it for you. Don't worry about that. If it is a grave or major situation, then of course he can get in touch with the teacher in charge, secretary general, or other higher authorities at the institution and at the conference. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that any difficulty you're facing, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to simply raise your placard and say permission to appeal to the chair. Once you are recognized, please freely in private. You don't need to even say in front of everyone. Private, go to the chairperson at the teacher's desk and inform him or her whatever your concern is. There's no judgments, there's no problems. We want smooth discussions, smooth deliberations, and healthy debate, no doubt. But if you're facing any problem, remember point number 9 is your go to point, and that point is known as appeal. This is what rule number 9 in the procedure is. The next point in this rules of procedure, something which is called censure. All right, what is censure? Censure basically means like somebody misbehaves in class and teacher tells them, okay, go outside and stand. That's basically what censure means. So in case in your committee there are say 35 of you sitting, and there is one person who's really causing problems, really causing an issue, really not letting committee move forward, or is just behaving like a rotten apple. At that juncture in time, you as delegates, quite literally all of you as one single unit of delegates, you all have something, and an instrument rather, which is called censure, where you can quite literally temporarily suspend that delegate from committee because that delegate is creating problems in the committee. So how do you censure a delegate? You censure the delegate by simply raising your placard, motion to censure the delegate of so and so country, and also mention the reason as why you're doing that. So say for example, I'm in your committee and I'm a very naughty character that way, I must be honest. And somebody speaking, X person is speaking, Y person is speaking, Z person is speaking, and while they're speaking, I'm continuously interrupting, maybe shouting, maybe creating funny noise, or just creating problems in the committee. Then all of you can simply raise your placard, or any one person can take the initiative to raise a placard and censure me from the committee, which basically means I will get suspended from the committee because I'm misbehaving in the committee. If it is a very serious thing I've done, then it can be a permanent suspension for the conference. If it's not a very serious thing, then maybe for that 15-20 minutes for that aspect of the discussion, I will be asked to step outside during the movements of your committee session at large. So this is what censure is. How do you do it? You simply raise your placard. Any one person can raise a placard, motion to censure the delegate of Prashant because he is not allowing other people to talk. And the thing out here is, like I told you from day one, everything goes through voting. So there will be a vote on this. And in censure, two-thirds majority, not simple majority, but two-thirds majority need to agree that, okay, Prashant is creating problems, he must be suspended from the committee. So if you all are 30 people, 21 of you minimum need to all be on the same page saying Prashant is creating problem, that is why we are wanting to remove him. Then I will get censured from the committee. You can also censure your executive board member. It's not like we want to it's a democracy, right? We want the committee to flow in the right way. So if you feel your chairperson is fooling around or is not guiding, mentoring, or conducting committee appropriately, all of you as delegates have the ability to quite literally censure the chairperson of your own respective committee as well. Thankfully, till date, this has not happened. We hope this year also it does not happen. Like I said, many of these rules are just there for your security, for your comfort, for your ability to communicate and solve. Not necessarily we need to use these different rules, but there are these instruments that are provided in case the time or need arises at any point of time. So this is what your rule number 9, or rather rule number 10, censure essentially means. Now when we move to another body, there's another body or another person rather involved in this conference. Very important person he is. His name is Mr. Johan. Now, what is his responsibility? He holds the designation of something that is known as Secretary General. What is a Secretary General? I'm sure when we read about the United Nations in our global perspectives, humanities, and social science textbooks, we would have come across a person's name from what do you call that? From Argentina, I believe, is where he is. And essentially, he is the most important person. His name is Antonio Guterres. All right. I was forgetting his first name, to be very honest, but his name is Antonio Guterres and he's from Portugal. And he is basically the head of the United Nations. Similarly, like that, we have a head of Hearts MUN as well. His name is Mr. Johan Matthew, and he is your Secretary General for Hearts MUN 2026. Now, what is the role of the Secretary General? The entire responsibility of the conference and the authority of the conference lies with this person and his team. And also at the same place is also our head of school, who is also over and above the Secretary General, the final decision maker of the conference. So both these authorities have sweeping powers, and their decision will be final, even over and above the executive board members at the conference. So when you look at it, they are basically the primary moderators. The Secretary General and the head of school are both primary moderators and administrators of the conference. How Antonio Guterres is responsible for the United Nations, its actions, and the developments inside the United Nations. Similarly, the Secretary General is responsible for the happenings and developments of the Hearts MUN 2026 conference. This is another body that is also involved. This is what your point number 11 is. Another body that is also involved in MUN is something called the organizing council. The organizing council, this body essentially is geared towards the facilitation of all aspects of the conference, even beyond your committee. They are the backbone of the conference. They are the ones who ensure your delegate kits are on your desk. They are the ones who ensure that whatever requirements are required by the executive board member and delegates are in place. And they are basically essentially the foundation of the conference on which everybody else essentially stands. So, in every one of your committee rooms, apart from your executive board members, you will also have representatives from the organizing council who are here to basically help you, guide you, be hospitable to you, and help the entire committee with along with the chairperson to move in the correct direction as well. Moving to point number 12, there may be some alternate debate formats that may be introduced in committee based on its need. Not necessarily a mandatory it will happen, but sometimes chairpersons feel for the betterment of discussion, for the betterment of debate, for the betterment of deliberation, let us introduce some new forms of discussion. So these new debate forms, well, there's no like script to it or formula to it. It happens quite naturally when we sit and discuss with people, and if required, will be introduced to you at the conference via your respective executive board members. This is essentially what your point number 12 about alternate debate forms are. With this, we conclude with the rules pertaining to the executive board and the other bodies who are associated with the growth, with the development and the implementation of Hearts MUN 2026. Much like that, let's focus now on rules that are connected directly to you, which every aspect of these rules involve you in some or the other way. These rules are known as debate rules, deliberation rules, discussion rules, however you'd like to place it. But these rules, 13, point number 13, all the way to point number 45, 25, all involve you in some form or the other. The first point that we're going to be discussing is attendance. The total number of delegates to be physically present to begin committee proceeding must be one-fourth of the total committee strength. Just a formality, because sometimes what happens in the actual United Nations, people are not able to attend, diplomats are not able to attend for whatever reason. So sometimes the discussions don't go through and committees are essentially adjourned to another date because there is not enough quorum or there's not enough attendance of all different parties involved or all different country diplomats involved. So that is the reason why in the actual United Nations as well as in Hearts MUN, we have something called a quorum or attendance, where essentially we ensure that as all the portfolios, as per the portfolios being represented in your respective committee, one fourth of your committee should be present at all times to officially and successfully conduct discussions and deliberations. This is essentially what point number 13 attendance means. Again, no need to drill too much into it. It's a mere formality. We are all coming here in any case. So this is just a simple formality that we will go through. The next point that I want to tell you about is something called setting the agenda. Now you see, I want you to visualize. I want you to visualize day two of the conference, the 29th of August. We all come to the school. Reporting time, I believe, is 8:45 a.m. After which, we move to our respective committee rooms, get seated. We'll be provided with our desk, our table, our conference kits. Everything will be provided to you. So you'll come there. You'll be seated. I want you to visualize this. Once you're seated, you will notice your chairperson and co-chairperson will walk into the committee and take their seats at the teacher's desk. So how do you start committee? Everyone's here. We're all inside the classroom. We've got our conference kits. All the different delegates from different schools in the same committee are sitting together. So what happens next? The first thing that needs to essentially happen is we need to officially set the agenda. We need to officially set the agenda. How do you do that? Now in MUN, there is a very, very common word which many MUNers would be familiar with. Some people would not be familiar with MUN but would have heard of this word called motion. Motion to do this, motion to do that, motion for X, motion for Y, motion for Z. So, what does this word motion mean? In very simple language, what does motion mean? Motion essentially means I am proposing to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, whatever it is. Basically, it is a proposition you are offering to the committee saying that, okay, I, on behalf of the committee, want to propose doing so and so thing. This is what motion means. Like how, if there's anything we want to do in school, we raise a hand, ma'am, can I use the washroom? Ma'am, can I go get a refill of my pen? Ma'am, can I do this? Ma'am, can I do that? Motion means, can we do this? Can we do that? So the first type of motion that we are going to discuss today is to set the agenda. This is what your point number 14 is, setting the agenda. How do you do this? You simply raise your placard. For those of you who don't know what is a placard, it is basically a creased, you could say, item which has your country's name printed on it. So you are recognized by the country you are representing. Anything you'd like to do in committee, you have to simply raise your placards as opposed to traditionally in traditional classrooms raising your hands. So when you want to raise a motion also, again you need to raise your placards. And the first motion that will be launched inside a committee will of course be setting the agenda. So how do you do this? You simply raise your placard and say the following statement: motion to set the agenda, de-dollarization of global trade in the WTO committee. What does this basically mean? Saying that, okay, we have all gathered here seated, chairpersons are the executive board members are there, delegates are there. Let's start going with the discussion. So I am proposing that let's start discussions. This is what motion to set the agenda basically means. Then of course, like I said, the United Nations and MUN being a platform of consensus, it will naturally go through informal voting. So once again, we will have informal voting, and based on simple majority, which naturally will be achieved, this agenda will be set in motion. This agenda will be on the table, and this agenda will start being discussed officially in committee, and grading on the discussions, deliberations, and engagements on this agenda will also begin. So simply put, what does setting an agenda mean? It means, okay, we are all here, let's start discussing. How to do it? Raise your placard, motion to set the agenda, whatever your agenda is. It goes through informal voting as a formality, and we basically start the official discussions at the committee and at the conference. This is what your point number 14 essentially means. Why this point is there, you may wonder, you must be thinking, but bro, we already know agendas, we've come to discuss this, so why we are getting into these formalities? The reason these formalities are there is because sometimes, and I'm sure in the near future, even at Hearts MUN, committees will not only be discussing one agenda, but can discuss even 2 or 3 agendas through the duration of the conference as well. And when this happens, when you set an agenda, you can vote on which agenda you want to basically select to discuss first. So that is why this rules of procedure is this instrument is given in the rules of procedure. So this is basically your point number 14, setting an agenda. Point number 15, a really important point. I want you guys to pay attention to this. It's called General Speakers List. I'm sure it's a term where MUNers are familiar with. I'm sure it's a term, some of you may not be familiar with. I'm sure it's a term that you've not been to MUN, but surely you must have heard of something called GSL if you know anything about MUN. So, what is a GSL exactly? And what am I supposed to be doing in a GSL is the question one would essentially ask. So, General Speakers List essentially is an introductory speech. What is this introductory speech? It's basically like giving an insight into who you are, not you personally, but what your country represents, your country's stance, your country's policy, your equation, your concern and connection with the problem or agenda at hand, as well as two, three proposed solutions. It is a 90-second introductory address. You don't need to do the whole Ramayana and Mahabharata in this. You don't need to complete every aspect of the agenda. What needs to be done is an introductory address where people should recognize you for the country you are representing, analyze whether you are for, against, or neutral when it comes to the agenda, and understand what your thought process, proposed solution, or insights on this agenda essentially are, all in the period of a maximum of 1.5 minutes. Again, what I have noticed, I will be very honest with you. I've been to several MUNs, and with the evolution of artificial intelligence, I have noticed that so many young folks like us, we are chat GPTing our GSLs and we are just reading it out from chat GPT. Now, again, like I said, I'm not against it. But what I'm trying to say is that if you are going to be sitting and reading from a mobile phone script and not speaking naturally and not looking at your audience when you are communicating to them, it gets very mundane and very, like a monologue. And people don't find interest in people reading from a mobile phone or piece of paper. So again, my suggestion is use AI if you want, no problem, but make pointers. Use it as a reference. Don't use it as a, oh, I'm going to type here and copy paste it in words out there. Speak naturally. Give a nice brief introduction, salutation and greeting to the committee. Explain the problem, how it is impacting your country or how it's impacting the world, and what your country feels that should be done about it. That's about it. This is what a GSL is. It's nothing so complex. People focus so much on it, they forget other parts of the conference. GSL is just an introductory address. There will be 101 more times you will get a chance to speak. So don't waste your time by hearting a speech or reading it from an AI or something like that. Simply put, introduction, what is the problem, how your country is concerned, one or two solutions you think should be done. That's it. GSL is mandatory. Please understand one thing, GSL is mandatory so that it gives an insight to the other delegates on your stance. See, the objective of GSL, I'll tell you what it actually is, what an actual reason for GSL is. It's not to give everyone an opportunity to speak. Yes, you speak when you want. It is to give you an opportunity to speak also, no doubt. But the real reason behind GSL is not about your speech. The most important thing to do during GSL is listen. And I'll tell you why. In the conference kits that you will receive on the 29th of August at your committee rooms, those conference kits will contain a Hearts MUN notepad. In that notepad, I want you to make one table with three columns. One table, one, two, and three columns. The headings of those three columns should be the following: for the topic, or friend, enemy, neutral. Friend, enemy, and neutral. These should be the topics or the headers of these three columns. What you need to do, apart from giving your extravagant GSL, is you need to listen to the other delegates' GSLs. And after that, what you need to do is you need to place them based on the country you are representing, based on what your country stands for. You need to place them as a friend, as an ally, as an enemy, or neutral. This is the real reason and the real objective of a GSL, where it gives, there are 35 countries, 35, 40 countries having opinions in the conference. 35, 40 countries having opinions in a conference. You don't know everyone's opinion. You can't research about 40 countries' opinions yourself. Even in the actual UN, people find it difficult to do it. So, this GSL will essentially give you an insight through their brief 1.5 minute speeches whether the country that is addressing the committee at that point of time, do they say share the same ideology or do they not share the same ideology? Do they feel the same as my country? Do they not feel the same as my country? Is the solution similar to mine or is the solution exactly opposite of mine? And through that, you will come to know that okay, these list of countries are my allies, are my friends. I need to work with them. These countries are my enemies or my they think of the opposite end of the spectrum, so I need to debate with them. And then you will have the list of the neutral countries which basically don't have so much of an impact on the agenda. This GSL will lay the foundation, the listening, not your reading of your GSL, but the listening of the GSL will lay the foundation of your further strategies, of your further deliberations and discussions in committee. Because when you hear the different speeches, the different addresses of all the different delegates of all the different countries of your committee, you will then know from that table which I'm asking you to make which countries you have to work with and are your allies, which countries are your enemies and think differently from you, and which countries are neutral and need to be convinced by you. This GSL is actually meant for this reason. It is to put you in a position to form your block, to form your team, to form your group. Your best friend may be India. I am Pakistan. We might be great friends outside the committee room, but inside the committee room, we don't belong in the same column. Pakistan is my enemy, India is my friend. That's what Russia would say. So, what I am trying to tell you, the GSL takes a little bit of time, no doubt, but it is very important as it lays the foundation for your strategies when it comes to committee. So what I'd like you to do when the GSLs are going on, apart from giving your own GSL, I want you to make those three columns. Once again, I'm repeating: ally, enemy, neutral. These are essentially the three, what do you call that, columns I want you to essentially make. If you do this correctly, my dear friends, if you do this correctly, my dear friends, let me assure you, you will have complete insight into who you need to work with, who you need to team up with. See, it's a team activity. Everything goes through voting. Everything goes through voting. So all the friends, if they work together, then they will vote for their solution. All the enemies will debate with you. And both people will try to convince the neutral party, saying, no, no, you join my team, you join my team. How will you get to know this? This you will get to know through the general speakers list, the GSL. That is why, my dear friends, GSL is very, very important. Now, say for example, we have been allocated 1.5 minutes. Out of these 1.5 minutes, I have used only 1 minute. I did not need. Why should I waste the committee's time? Why should, put extra information where it's not required? It's just an introductory speech to communicate these three things. So I have some time left. I have 30 seconds left. You can use those 30 seconds wisely. Wisely. How? There is an option which is point number 16 in the rules of procedure, which is called yields. Which is called yields. YIELDS. So, what is this yields? How does it work? And what is it used for? Yields is basically giving your time back to the committee. You have different options, but it basically means giving your time back to the committee so that the committee could use those 90 seconds, those 1.5 minutes appropriately. instead of wasting them. If you've spoken for 60 seconds, 1 minute, and you have 30 seconds left, you don't need to simply give away the time. That's your time. You can choose what you want to do with it. And that's the reason why what you must do is yield your time accordingly. There are three types of yields. The first type of yield is something called yield to the chair. Okay, I will come to this last. The first type of yield is yield to questions. What does yield to questions means? It means that, okay, we have Prashant as a delegate. He's come, he's given his address, he's finished in 1 minute, he has 30 seconds left. Instead of Prashant wasting his 30 seconds, what will he do? He will yield to questions. Why? Because while speaking, I have observed that, hey, you know what, I have said some important things, and I feel that some of the delegates in my committee some of the delegates in my committee have some questions to ask me based on what I said. They can be questions, they can be clarifications, they can be anything. Yield to questions basically allows the committee, the other delegates in your committee, to ask you questions based only on what you have shared in your GSL. What I'm trying to say is, if you are given a speech 60 seconds, you feel okay, some of your allies want some answers, some of your enemies want to debate with you, yield to questions. And essentially, the chairperson will allow the other delegates in the committee to ask questions. You, being a delegate sitting on the other side, you are listening to my speech, trying to place me in one of the three columns. If you have some doubt, if you have some clarification, if you want some, clarity on X particular thing that I have shared, you can be the delegate to ask me a question saying, Prashant, bro, you told me about this. What do you mean? Could you please, emphasize so I get a better understanding of what your thought is? So yield to questions allows the other delegates in your committee to ask you questions based on what you have said in your general speakers list introductory address. The second type of yield, is another type of yield is called yield to another delegate. Yield to another delegate. So, say for example, I am India, and I'm talking about de-dollarization of global trade or whatever agenda. One of our closest friends of India is Russia. In fact, our Ministry of External Affairs, Shri Jaishankarji, he was just, I think, in the last 24 hours with Mr. Putin and his team in Russia as well, because we share such good relationships. So, I, being the delegate of India, have given my introductory speech. I don't want to take questions from the rest of the committee. It's my time. I can choose. So, instead of yielding to questions, I have another option where I can yield to another delegate. So suppose I find Russia out there, and Russia is my friend, and Russia says that, okay, bro, you have said some interesting things. I want to show my support, or I want to, you could say, reinforce what you have shared as well. So I can yield to another delegate, where another delegate from the committee can share that 30 seconds of my time, can use that 30 seconds of my time appropriately, preferably an ally country as opposed to an enemy country is who you should yield to the time. So I'll be like, okay, I'm done. I would like to yield the delegate of India would like to yield the remainder of its time to the delegate of Russia. This is the second type of yield. And most importantly, there is something called yield to the chair, which basically means if you're confused between the two, hey, should I yield to another delegate? Should I yield to questions? What should I do? When in doubt, yield to the chairperson. Chairperson is an experienced MUNer. He's like a friend. He's like a mentor. He has been where you are 100 times over. So chairperson will know what would be best for you. So yield to the chairperson. Chairperson can decide. This is essentially what yields essentially means. Again, point number 16, yield, three types of yield: yield to questions, yield to another delegate, and yield to the chair. This is what you call yields. The next point I want to discuss with you, my dear friends, today is something which is called moderated caucus. Again, this is a type of motion. Motion, just to summarize, means I am proposing let's do ABC things. One of the motions we discussed was setting the agenda. Another example of motion is something which is called moderated caucus. Now, what is moderated caucus? In simple Gen Z, Gen A language, what does this mean? Moderated caucus is a detailed discussion on a subtopic of the main agenda. Let me break it down for you. Now, these agendas we're discussing, be it the Middle Eastern crisis, be it de-dollarization of global trade, be it any topic, they are quite complex issues with many sub-issues, with many things contributing to that main problem. Say, for example, Middle Eastern crisis, because everyone is familiar with, let's use that as an example. Middle Eastern crisis does not only involve oil, it involves the control of the Hormuz Strait. It involves the decision on whether Iran should be a nuclear power or not. It involves humanitarian issues. It involves, the Red Cross and other such organization. It involves economic impacts across the world. So many things it involves, this Middle Eastern crisis. Now, when we talk about this Middle Eastern crisis, all these different subtopics come under it. Like I gave you a few examples. Like that, my friends, each one of these contributing issues to this major issue of Iran, when discussed in detail, it is discussed in detail in what you call a moderated caucus. In what you call a moderated caucus. How do you open a moderated caucus? You simply raise your placard, motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss the control of Strait of Hormuz. Motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss Iran's nuclear strategy. Motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss the humanitarian impacts of the Middle Eastern crisis. Motion to discuss a moderated caucus for the relationships between the Arab countries. So, what basically moderated caucus enables you to do? It gives you a place to start finding solutions. You see, these problems are so big and so vast. One thinks, okay, where I should begin? If I start discussing Hormuz, what about the nuclear bomb? If not the nuclear bomb, what about the inflation and oil prices? So many things are involved. Moderated caucus enables us to break down this vast agenda that you all are discussing and solving into sub agendas, into subtopics which are contributing towards this major agenda. This is what moderated caucus is. It's a formal discussion. It can be for a maximum of 10 minutes and maximum time per speaker 1 minute. So what essentially happens? It's like a textbook. I want you to visualize your SST textbook or a global perspective textbook or your, any textbook. You would notice you have something called chapters, right? Modules or chapters. You have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, or module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however you like to name it. Each module is part of the subject, but each module is different from each other. What we do is we basically study each chapter wise, or each module wise. We discuss each subtopic wise, even though it's part of the same subject, same agenda. This is essentially what moderated caucus enables you to break down the problem, break down this issue that you are discussing into multiple sub issues and discuss each sub issue in detail. You start with moderated chapter 1 or moderated caucus 1, then you go to chapter 2, moderated caucus 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and voila, by the time you discuss all the moderated caucuses, you have completed every aspect that contributes to the major problem, which is your agenda. 60 to 70% of your time will go in motions of moderated and unmoderated caucuses. Now, say for example, I want to open a moderated caucus to discuss the control of Strait of Hormuz. Just because I want to discuss it, that does not make it compulsory. That does not make it compulsory that everybody in the committee needs to discuss it. It does not make it compulsory. I am proposing to do it. But the committee is a democracy. It's a consensus platform. So the motion that I have proposed will be put to informal voting. So if majority people agree, saying, hey, we want to discuss this motion, or yes, this is an important motion, should be discussed, it's an important issue, we must discuss it, they will vote yes for it. And there will be some people who will vote no for it also, based on the simple majority, like how we did pizza and pasta yesterday. Based on the simple majority, more than 50% people think that, okay, yeah, bro Prashant, uh, it's important to discuss the Strait of Hormuz when it comes to Middle Eastern crisis. That motion will be in motion and the discussion will start. Now here are a tip for those who are joining my session today. Here's a tip I want to give you. When a motion for a moderated caucus comes in, you have an option. You have, as a delegate, as an option. You have voted, you have proposed it, so naturally you are going to speak in it. Remaining other delegates can also speak in it. Those will be selected by the chairperson. You, as a delegate, will have the option to speak either first or speak last. Now, most people get excited and say, no, no, I have raised the motion, so I want to speak first. What one forgets is that the maximum time per speaker is 1 minute. So, if you want to emphasize on multiple things, considering you are the proposer for that motion, that 1 minute might seem less. So, always choose to speak last. Why? Because reason number A, there will be other 9 delegates in your committee who will also speak. Those 9 delegates might cover the same point you want to cover, so you don't have to waste your valuable time allocated to you on that. Point number B, you will be able to listen to what other people have to say, including your enemies, before you can have the final message put across in that motion and have a lasting impact. So, a smart delegate, my friends, a smart delegate would always choose to speak in a moderated caucus last as opposed to first, keeping in mind the pointers she has in mind, and at the same point of time absorbing the information shared by the other delegates also in the committee. So it's a very strategic move. It's a very strategic move even in the United Nations, because think about it. Iran might say anything, Russia might say anything. In the end, if Donald Trump speaks, then the lasting impact will be of who? Always a last speaker, because he can refer and address to all the other delegates' addresses before. And who gets this? Who gets this privilege and option? The person who has raised the moderated caucus, now, who has taken initiative to open that motion for moderated caucus, he or she will get this privilege to essentially speak first or last in a committee. This is essentially what a moderated caucus essentially is. Now, what I'd like you to do, as you could say, not as homework, but as part of preparation, based on your agenda, I want you to list out 10 different moderated caucus topics. Like how I give you example of Middle Eastern crisis, your own agenda, do your own research and list down 10 moderated caucus topics that you feel would be helpful to bring about in committee and discuss with other delegates. Keep in mind one thing while you do this. These moderated caucus topics should not concern only you. It should concern everybody in the committee. Because if you are going to discuss your own issue, then no one's going to be wanting to discuss it with you because it goes to voting, right? So it should be an inclusive moderated caucus discussion, not something pertaining solely to your country. That is for your home minister to do, not for you to do being a foreign minister. This is what I'd like you to do for moderated caucus. The next point I want to touch across today is something called unmoderated caucus. You see, committee goes in a particular cycle. There is a cycle that is generally automatically created. It goes moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus, moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus, and so on and so forth. Continuously jumps between moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucuses. 70 to 80% of your time in committee will jump between these specific 2 points, moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucuses. Moderated caucuses we already discussed. So, what is an unmoderated caucus? What is an unmoderated caucus? An unmoderated caucus is more of a, you could say, consensus building, informal, solution oriented, lobbying, negotiation oriented discussion between the committee that generally follows after a moderated caucus. Why? Because you see, there is this main problem, Middle Eastern crisis. In that big problem, Middle Eastern crisis, you discuss one of the problems that is creating this big problem. After discussing that problem in the moderated caucus, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to address it? What unique, innovative, creative solution we are going to create? This is what happens in an unmoderated caucus. It is a time when you can get up. It's an informal discussion, so you can get up from your desks, go and liaison. Remember, in the general speakers list, you made three groups. One was your friends, one was your enemies, and one was the neutral people. What you must do after your in your moderated caucus is get up from your chairs, strategize, make strategy and plan with your friends. Try to convince or make the enemies compensate, and try to convince the neutral people to come onto your side. This is what needs to be done in unmoderated caucus. It's like, okay, we've all shared our concerns, we've shared a problem about this Hormuz Strait, we've all said what we had to say. Now, boss, what are we going to do about it? Now that we've all said what we had to say about it, what is the solution to this? What are we going to do about it? This happens in an unmoderated caucus where you can lobby, you can negotiate, you can deliberate, you can strategize, and you can work on your solutions as well. Also, I will explain to you the solutions as we progress further. But unmoderated caucus is basically what we've had a formal discussion of moderated caucus. We've discussed this entire problem of Hormuz Strait at end. Now it is time to sit with our friends, strategize, plan, create solution, negotiate, convince, debate, deliberate amongst the other delegates in the committee. This is what an unmoderated caucus essentially is. Now, don't waste your time. One request I'll tell you, in many times I have seen a lot of people waste their time in unmoderated caucus. I have seen them even playing PUBG for that matter. Don't do that, because if you fall behind in the discussions, you won't enjoy your experience. Neither will you be in position to contribute as we move further as well. To go to from chapter 1 to chapter 2, you need to complete chapter 1, no? So be, what do you call that, involved in the unmoderated caucus. Discuss the intellectual aspects, discuss the problem, discuss the potential solutions, negotiate with your enemies, convince your neutral countries. This is what you must do in an unmoderated caucus. Very, very, very important. Much like that, my dear friends, there is something which is called points. This is point number 19. We have different motions. There are two types of things that happen in committee mostly. One is points, one is motions. You will observe, and many experienced MUNers would also have already observed, that there is one standardized statement that is provided by the chairperson to the committee at all times. And that standardized statement is any points or motions on the floor. Standard thing they will continuously, what do you call that, ask in the committee. We have completed an example of few motions. Of course, I will give you few more. But apart from motions, there's something called points. And in some totality, there are 5 different points that are there. The first type of point is called point of personal privilege, which basically means if I am facing any difficulty, I am not able to, hear another speaker, or maybe I want to use a washroom. Informally, when we are in class, we raise our hand and say, "Ma'am, can I go to the toilet, or can I go to the washroom?" And ma'am says, "Yes, okay, go." But in the formal United Nations, you cannot raise a placard and say, "Listen, I am going to the washroom, right? Can I excuse myself? I need to, step out." Point of personal privilege. So basically, mom is called, dad is called, you are not able to hear something, delegate is sitting all the way back, you are not audible. Point of personal privilege, I'm unable to hear what the delegate of so and so country is sharing. Like that, my dear friends, there is point of information. Point of information is basically means what? Is suppose I have made a statement in committee about the content of my speech or statement. Then I can ask for point of information, which basically means that, okay, if I have made a statement, I need to prove that statement. I cannot just go around sharing anything that I want. That will just become hearsay. So, point of information is to justify or elucidate or prove any statement that I have shared in the committee. You can raise a placard and ask another delegate for the point of information. The third point, my dear friends, is point of order. If you feel, if you feel that any particular delegate has, say for example, given false information, lied in committee, concealed, the truth, and you know it because you have been researching well, you can raise a placard and say, point of order, this information is not factual, this information is wrong, this information is inaccurate. However, if you are going to be taking the initiative, if you are going to be taking the initiative to point a finger at somebody else, make sure you have credible proof, not an Instagram reel, credible sources of information, credible point, and credible reference to when you use point of order. It can give you a lot of plus points, but it can also give you minus points as well. So, say if I'm the delegate of North Korea and I say, bro, I don't have any nuclear bombs. Of course, you guys know that I do have nuclear bombs. At least a well-researched person should know that. Can raise a placard saying delegate of North point of order, delegate of North Korea has nuclear bombs. Here are the satellite images. Here is the proof. Here is a public statement given by the head of the nation that they are in possession of these bombs. So point of order is a very helpful point. However, if you are going to be accusing another diplomat of misinterpretation, inaccuracy, factual or otherwise, you must have the credible source of proof and evidence to go with it. This is point of order. Finally, there is something called point of parliamentary inquiry. So suppose I am a first time delegate and I have the rules of procedure, I have lot of information, I want to speak a lot, but I'm not, like, what I want to say is not fitting in the procedure when I'm seeing it. Like, I want to do something in committee, I just don't know how to do it. So, very simple, very easy. Please use these points for all first timers. Raise your placard, say point of parliamentary inquiry, and tell the chairperson that, I want to do ABC, XYZ things in committee. I'm looking at the rules of procedure. I don't know what point to use. Can you please guide me? The chairperson will essentially tell you, okay, this is what you want to do, this point use. What I am trying to tell you, that in case you want to do something in committee, you want to raise a motion, a point, anything, and you are confused, should I use this point, that point, which point of the procedure I should use, simply raise your placard, point of parliamentary inquiry, this is my concern, give me a solution. Ask your chairperson, they will guide you. And finally, there is point of order on executive board. Suppose I have taken the liberty to use a wrong procedure, then another delegate who knows the procedure well can point it out as well also. That is the reason why it is always safer, when in doubt, point of parliamentary inquiry. Please, first timers, remember that, very helpful to you. In case in doubt, this is a complex procedure, I am little confused, this is what I want to do, point of parliamentary inquiry. No problem at all, your problem will be solved there. Like I said, the rules of procedure are more to help you towards reaching solutions, reaching consensus, and growing in innovative solution making, not to put you on a leash or to close the doors on you. So when you're in doubt, there are two things, my fellow beginners. One is appeal for any difficulty or grievance, and the second is procedure problem you're facing. What do I do? What do I do? Point of parliamentary inquiry. That's it. These are the 5 different points when it comes to the rules of procedure. With that, my dear friends, we do have a few points left, just 4 points left apart from paperwork. So these 4 points along with the paperwork is something which we will continue with in tomorrow's session. So once again, dear students and everyone else present out here, thank you for joining us for the second session of Hearts MUN 2026, and see you all tomorrow once again at 6 p.m. for our next session and final session where I will cover the remaining rules of procedure. Don't worry, I'm not going to not cover it. And also, all of you who have questions are free to stay back, and in the chat box, you can ask me questions in an orderly fashion, and I will be happy to answer each one of them as well. That being said, once again, wishing you and your families a happy Onam. Have a beautiful evening, and thank you for joining us today's session. And Nandri, to all of you, wonderful, wonderful people as well. Bye bye, and see you tomorrow at 6 p.m.